done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Our conversation continues with the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit, Grace Wangeshi, on safety of protesters. City.
You know, the problem with the situation such as the one we have, I mentioned in passing that it's for some people an opportunity to do things that they, in ordinary circumstances, when we didn't have the disturbances, they could not do. That's one. Two, I've had conversations with members of the security forces in this country, and one of the things that I've raised with some of the ones I know is this very thing we're discussing, the disappearances. And let me just mention what one of these individuals whom I know told me. Said, you know, we have a problem, they said, with criminals. Said, some are people who were in the service as we are, some are not. Said, the problem is, even when you have arrested someone and you think they are going through the process, so there's usually no guarantee that they'll even end up in jail. Okay. So then some are repeat criminals, and the longer they stay away in power, I mean, the longer they stay out of jail, the greater the danger they cause. But they also told me that the other danger is their own life. Said, if you are the arresting officer and this person is not in jail, your life is also in danger. Now, I'm reporting what I was told. So they say some of the times the things that people see and understand may look like it is cruel. Said, but they cannot always reveal why it is they do what they do. That is what I've reported. But my understanding of the situation as I see it, especially with our security forces, is something that was brought up here by one of our guests. When you have a security service like the police service, who live in the manner that they live, who are paid the sort of salaries they're paid, who are not facilitated as properly as they ought to, who are not given the wherewithal and an ecosystem within which they can carry out their functions properly, whether it's being provided with adequate vehicles, whether it's being provided with whatever it is they need to carry out their duties. The net result is you have a force that is traumatized. It may not appear so, because you cannot have people who seem to find it normal to inflict pain and to kill people and to do the sort of things that we do unless that individual is that way inclined. And the only way people get that way inclined is either you are born with a psychological defect or you're somebody who in your life, it's something you experience. So meeting it out is not very difficult. Now, that is what I have surmised. Now, let me tell you my thoughts. It's in the form of a question. When we fight for the rights of the citizens, the police, men and women, are also citizens. Who fights for their rights? Because they also have rights.
Okay. Very, very good question. Now, IMLO convenes a network of 23 organizations. And our network is called the Police Reforms Working Group. So let me start at that. Now, why this network came to be is to look at the rights and welfare of the police as well, and what reforms are necessary for Kenyans to enjoy their freedoms, their fundamental freedoms as provided in law. Now, two things. One, there's absolutely no way as a state agent that you can say, because I'm not adequately equipped, because I am not, I don't have the provisions in terms of proper housing, in terms of whatever, that I will mete out my frustrations on Kenyans or on citizens. You can never do that. That is a line you can never cross, never. However, you also have fundamental rights, absolutely. And if you go back to the Maraga report, the task force report, it highlights a lot of these things in regards to police welfare, in regards to how their training, in regards to the equipment, access to medical services. All that is there. And the police service commission and the state organs are supposed to ensure that the police are taken care of. But that does not in any way, and should never in any way, influence how you treat a citizen. Number one, you're paid by taxpayers' money. Number two, you are trained through taxpayers' money. Number three, you opted to take this up as a job, as a role, and you were sworn in to the protection and safeguarding of rights. You can never go back on this. Kenya has ratified all these international instruments. The International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the Protection Against Torture, all this, and we have a constitution to begin with. So let's separate the issues. It is true, there are many issues around the police welfare, training. In fact, one of the big things and the gaps in training is around human rights. It's around professionalism. How do they understand human rights? They are, being able to perform in a professional manner. That is what now you're talking about. So professionalism means I have this responsibility and mandate. I will uphold myself to the highest standards possible. I can never negate that. It does not matter.
It's an oath you saw anyway.
It's an oath you saw. Yes.
But doctors swear
and a ground.
an oath as well. Do they not?
And let me just say this. We are actually, the Police Reforms Working Group has been working with the National Police Service, with different organs, to provide technical support, to agree on areas we can support, improve, and also push for their rights and welfare. So we're also doing that. We're even ready, and we do offer psychosocial support because they also go through trauma. Yeah? So let's not mix things. The oath is so fundamental. You cannot play around with an oath.
Let me go back to the statement I made. Doctors take an oath. Do they not?
Yes,
now,
they
having
do.
taken that oath, they have the ability to do something the police cannot do. They have a union, they go on strike. Why? Because certain fundamental rights that they have been abrogated. Certain understandings that they have not been met. When the doctors go on strike, do they seek to have people die? No. But do people die? Yes. Do people, are there individuals who are unattended to? Yes. The police cannot go on strike. So if they have rights that are being abrogated, they cannot in any way have any industrial action or demonstrate about the problems that they have. That's why I raised the question. I'm going to disagree with you on a little point here. Much as I would like to separate issues, we actually cannot. Our experiences make us who we are. Whether it is the lived experience as a child, my experience in my training where I went to school, my experience in the work I do and the people I work with, they all influence us and they all determine the way we behave. If I look at the ecosystem within which somebody who works in the police service, what they encounter on a daily basis, we cannot say that it doesn't influence or affect their lives and it doesn't affect the outcomes of how they relate to the citizenry. It does. And that's why the mitigating circumstances that led to the question asked has to be asked and then has to be addressed. Because if they can't do what the rest of us can do, and yet they also have rights, and that the same government that falls short of meeting the things that we desire, falls short of meeting what they desire, the effort that IMLU makes is laudable. But a lot more needs to be done, and beyond IMLU. IMLU may be stretched to their limits, but IMLU cannot do what it is that the government is actually supposed to do.
Absolutely. We are in total agreement. In fact, what we do is simply demand for accountability. We simply demand that the rights that we have ratified within the international instruments, that the rights provided for in our constitution are safeguarded. Why do we have the rule of law? It is to set in place certain standards so that we have a functional country, so that democracy can be upheld, so that people's rights, opinions, voice can be heard. Why are people protesting? Why are people picketing? It is because there are certain things they want to communicate. It is because they want to get audience. It is because they want their issues to be heard, and heard by the right person, heard by the right offices, and not just heard but actioned upon. And when I say that people are getting angry and frustrated, it is because, yes, at times we hear, yes, at times the government hears, but are they actioning on what change the people want? It's not like the Gen Zs have nothing to do. It's not like they're not putting their lives at risk. It's not like Kenyans don't have anything to do. When people go out on the streets, they are going out there because we want a better Kenya. They want a better Kenya. IMLU and its partners in the Police Reforms Working Group and other civil society organizations are there to ensure that the space is conducive for people to be heard, for government to deliver on its mandate. And so, yes, in some ways, you cannot negate, of course, the rights and welfare of state officers. That's fundamental. However, you cannot, and my point is, and I'll insist on this point, you cannot say that because I am not adequately remunerated or resourced, then I will pour out my frustration on the people I'm supposed to safeguard. That's my point. You cannot do that. So right now, the Constitution, Article 37, provides for the right to peaceably protest. And so if there's a notice that we're going to protest, the police have been trained on how to handle the public, how to safeguard, how to crowd control. Let them adhere to those procedures as long as the protests are ongoing and they are peaceful. That has been provided for. And I think the conversation around tomorrow, because I have heard the acting IG's message, yesterday. If we uphold the Constitution and we provide for the protests to go on without the infiltration by goons and people who come to cause violence, it will be peaceful and people can go back home. We have witnessed many peaceful protests here. And I think it is important that we say, let the law be followed, because that's why we have a law. Why did we invest in having a constitution if we're not going to adhere to it or safeguard it because somebody's welfare is not being, it's in want? I don't believe in that.
How do you ensure this balance? Because yes, there are very many people who want to come out to protest just to make sure that their voice is heard, and they are peaceful. They want to do it peaceably, lawfully, and follow all guidelines.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there may be those who are coming who are otherwise motivated. They have either been paid or they've been, recruited, or they've been told, okay, you guys go there, but make sure that these peaceful ones are not as loud as they are. All right? How do you guard against that?
Okay.
If you're a police officer, if you're a fellow demonstrator, how do you do it?
Yeah. Now, I like the call the Gen Zs have made. They have said we want to have a peaceful protest. And they have said, goons, whoever is hiring people, please do not infiltrate. They have made a passionate call that I have seen in the media. It's everywhere. Now, what the law provides for, and I want to read the duties of and obligations of duty bearers. Respect and protect the rights of individuals to express their views and assemble peacefully. Use non-violent methods to manage and de-escalate situations to avoid unnecessary force. They have been trained on how to de-escalate situations. They have been trained on use of appropriate force, measures that quell and calm, the situation. There was a court ruling in Malindi recently that banned the police from using excessive force. So upholding the law, this is a court ruling. When we disregard a court ruling, what does that speak to? So in regards to the balance, Eric, there are lots, and we've actually issued as IMLU and other partners, the do's and don'ts, yeah? Issue warnings before taking enforcement actions, giving people a chance to comply, ensure access to medical aid for anyone who's injured, wear police uniform. be identifiable by badge number to promote accountability. The issue of having people in plain clothes holding guns and big machines and being part of the crowd control, and back to the question you asked, they cannot be part of the crowd control in police uniform if they're not police. I mean, how? How? So in as much as we are saying the narrative is the people who abducted are not police, it's a false narrative. It is a false narrative because police would never allow you to stand with them and crowd control. I mean, unless really we've lost it. We've lost complete control. So if that is what we are saying, then it's a different conversation. But I do believe, and I have confidence, that if we changed our attitude, the National Police Service can actually do a good job. They can do a good job and manage the protests and actually stand out and say, we lived within the provisions of the law, we've allowed and enabled Kenyans to express themselves, and they can be celebrated. They can set standards. It's never too late to change. I am appealing that we go back to the Constitution, we go back to the training. And I'm also appealing, if you have been paid as a goon, if there's anyone out there planning to infiltrate, please stop it. Kenya belongs to all of us. It belongs to all of us. Let's have peaceful protests. It's a right. It will never stop. Because there are things I will not agree with. There are things, Eric, you'll not agree with. You need somebody to listen to you.
Wangechi, I know we have SACCOs. We have Matatu SACCOs. Teachers have SACCOs. Civil servants have SACCOs. Do goons have SACCOs?
Nice question. I have no idea. I have no idea, but somebody who pays them is listening.
The voice that is listened to in this country, and it has been demonstrated, the goons would never have come out if the protesters were not being effective. And the goons, it's a career path
Absolutely.
that some people have chosen, and they have found that in one way or the other it pays. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother with it. But what I fear is not that it is a career path, that is a growth industry. That is what I fear. And if you look at the genesis of it, there are people in society who have always been rogue. They exist. But they're always fewer than the rest of us. But when you have leaders in authority disregarding, for instance, court orders, like the immediate former president, what do you think you set in motion in terms of telling the citizenry and how they should relate to the law?
Exactly.
And to pronouncements by the courts?
Exactly. Very good point. If the peaceful protests were not successful, there would be no goons on the street.
None.
There would be absolutely no goons on the street. And it therefore means that there is a space and place for the protests. Change only happens because somebody stands up and says, I'm not going to uphold status quo anymore, because things need to be done differently. Now, these goons, it's so unfortunate that they have seen an opportunity and gotten in. But I still go back to the person who's charged with the responsibility to manage them. The National Police Service. By the way, they can single them out in a crowd. They know them.
They do.
Their demeanor, the way they act, what they carry is telling.
Well, they know them even by name.
They even know them by name, some of them. So there's no way they are not able to manage them. There is absolutely no way they are not able to manage them if they wanted. And that's why I'm saying change of attitude, behaviors. That has to happen. We must change our attitude. And the Maraga report is very clear on that. Attitude of the police, attitude, behavior. I have been trained. I mean, let's go back to a gory picture in our minds. How do you have a sniper shooting down at innocent young people? How? How do you use live ammunition on young people of this great land of ours who are carrying nothing but a placard, piece of paper, and a phone? What justification would you ever have? And so it goes back to goodwill. But then the president stood and said, allow them to picket because it's their right, as long as it's within the confines of the law. Just provide escort security for them. Don't interfere. Let's listen, give an audience. Because when you're protesting, you're actually giving your voice to somebody. There's somebody you're giving out your protest to, your request, your petitions. Do you know that statement would make a very big difference? And if somebody stood and said, by the way, we acknowledge that the state has failed in safeguarding the rights of Kenyans, that we have 601 people injured, and we take responsibility that we have lost 60 people. By the way, remember, last year during the Maandamanos, we lost 67 people.
Yep.
Any acknowledgement or action?
None.
None.
Doesn't come. Grace, we hope that tomorrow will actually be peaceful, like you said.
Yeah.
Grace Wangeshi is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. We've been talking about safety of protesters. There's a law that says that you have a right to protest. There's a police that's supposed to safeguard your safety and all. Let's make it peaceful. 8 a.m. news.